Hello everyone, I hope you're having a great day. So, as probably a lot of you already know and probably have already seen, there's been some major leaks going on in regards to the new General's Handbook coming out. The big one that's focusing all about the Wizards, and it's going to be the longest one to date. So I just wanted to, I just thought might as well just start talking about some of the new stuff that's coming up. I'm not going to be covering all of it because I'll get to that later, but I'm just going to go over the stuff that most interests me and some of the stuff I think there's going to be most relevant in the upcoming new season. So, just some stuff about the new handbook coming out. Well, like I mentioned, this is going to be the new season, and it's all about wizards in general, specifically wizards under 10 wounds. And I think one of the biggest things people are talking about is it's kind of now bucking the trend of General's Handbooks only lasting for approximately 6 months. This one is going to last a whole year, and more than likely, this is probably going to be the last season we're going to have before 4th edition kicks in. So this is both good and bad, as I'm going to discuss further, because again, we're basically going to be here for quite some time, so we're going to have to get used to whatever this new book brings. Now it does focus heavily on wizards. However, I do like that it is going to give non-magic armies a lot of stuff to play with, which I think is a good idea, because one criticism I did have of previous seasons of the General's Handbook was it focused, I feel, a little too much on its main theme, and armies that didn't really fit that theme really didn't have much to do. Like, case in point, Sons of Bahamut really didn't have much of anything for the last little while. And there is some definite good and bad in the book, at least from what I can see from cursory viewing. So let's get into that right now. So, realm rules. Well, the first of the bunch is essentially all wizard heroes, mind you, that are non-unique. Essentially, if they have 9 or less wounds, they gain a new keyword called Dorian Locus. I think I'm saying that right. If I'm not, I'm sorry in advance, but I don't think I can say it any better than that. Again, sorry in advance. So essentially what this does, at the start of the battle round, the player going second can basically pick a hero with this new keyword, and essentially that hero, again, if it's a wizard, obviously, can cast 1 extra spell or unbind 1 extra spell in that battle round. Conversely, if you're going second and you choose a non-Dorian Locus hero, you instead just gain 1 extra command point. So that's not bad. I mean, like, again, this is continuing with GW's Eternal Crusade to make those going second in the battle round have like little bonuses for not going first. Again, this is a can of worms I'm not going to open up again. People have pretty much made their opinions clear in regards to, like, the double turn and the random turn, and at GW trying to give incentives to go second. But anyway, I think this is a good idea. I think this is pretty good, because again, wizards always want to cast and unbind more, and non-wizards, well, they essentially they want something at all. So an extra command point I think is pretty good. I mean, not the greatest thing in the world, but definitely not bad. So again, this is basically, as I mentioned, the wizard theme is definitely showing right here. Like, obviously, wizards are this is definitely going to, I think, benefit wizards more than non-wizards. And in addition to that, too, one thing I did notice in this regard is that it's crucial in that it's battle round active. So what I mean is that it seems to be active in it seems to be active in either hero phase, if I'm reading it correct. So that's good too, because that means we don't have to be worried about, like, knowing what specific hero phase you have to do it in, so that's always good. And on top of this, too, it doesn't seem to discriminate based on mounts, which was something that's often been a thing in the past where, for example, heroes with mounts or units with mounts didn't benefit in previous seasons. So that's pretty good, too. And I think, as some people have pointed out, it's probably in regards to, let's say, the Seraphon, who a lot of with several of their wizard heroes having mounts. This was probably made intentionally not to lock them out of the ability. So and onto the other realm rules. I think the one and this one I think is going to have a bigger impact on the game if we're really being honest. In some ways, and less impact in others. So the next big thing that's happening is primal magic. So essentially, at the start of the hero phase, and it seems to be both hero phases, you basically both players roll off, and for each 4+ that's rolled, both players gain a dice. So essentially, if both players roll a 4+, both players get 2 dice. So and dice appear to be cumulative. It doesn't seem that you lose them during each turn or battle round. So it's treated definitely more like a resource now. So essentially what it is that whenever a wizard is casting, unbinding, or dispelling, you after you get the roll, you can use any number of your primal magic dice from your pool, and you can roll them as well and add that to the unbinding, casting, or dispelling. So essentially, you could roll even up to 3 or more dice just when you're trying to get off a spell, which is a big deal. And I think as people have seen from the Slaves to Darkness battle tome, rolling more dice, it really helps get that average up when you're casting spells. However, there are some caveats. However, for example, if you use an ability that allows you to re-roll the spell, you can't use the primal magic dice. So basically, you can't roll a dice, re-roll it, and then roll more primal dice, or re-roll the primal dice. It's one or the other. So keep that in mind. Also, there's also a big caveat too. There are actually a couple caveats. If you do any double 1s on any of these dice, your caster takes D3 plus 3 mortal wounds. So enough to kill a lot of wizards. So, that's basically an incentive to be careful, not just throwing 3 additional dice onto the roll of whatever you're doing, because you're up in the odds here. However, also, if you roll double 6s, however, the spell, and if you're now this is specifically for a spell, but if you roll double 6s when casting a spell and you used primal dice, it automatically goes off and it cannot be unbound. But there is a caveat here though. If you do this, both players gain additional primal magic dice. Not just your opponent as well. So essentially, you roll the dice, you roll 2 6s, the spell automatically goes off, but you're giving your opponent dice as well as yourself. So that is something to keep in mind. So overall, I think it's a nice idea for a new resource. For example, because like I said, it seems to be cumulative, and I also like that it allows a lot more interactivity, because how you gain dice in both the roll off at the beginning of the turn and rolling double 6s, it affects both you and your opponent. So it's not just one player getting a bonus all the time. I really like that idea of more interactivity between the players. I know some people have opinions on it about how it could slow down the game, or just add more thinking, but I really like that, because with playing, you want to have as much interactivity as possible. You don't want just your opponent just sitting there on his hands and knees just waiting to take hits. I think that's good. Now, I will admit, though, I don't think this is going to go over well with everyone, because, again, this is treated as a new resource system that is used during the game, and, again, it's just going to be another thing to keep track of. So on top of everything else in the game, whichever faction it has to keep track of, they're now going to have to keep track of this, too. So I thought some people are not going to like this, because they're going to just cry rules bloat, but, I think that's going to be this is just going to be a broken base argument. You're either going to love it or hate it, I think. So it is either here nor there. But I do like how this idea will add a lot of good consistency to Magic now, especially when we get to the new realm spells. Now as the primal magic dice basically very much favor units that can interact with magic directly, and how this whole season in addition is going to be very heavy magic focused, they basically kind of thrown a bone to the non-magic armies, the Nullstone Adornments, which are basically the new a bunch of new universal artifacts. They're pretty much the same as others we've had in the past. They're extra artifacts that you can take. You get one of these in addition to your own, and you can get more with any ability that allows you to take extra enhancements. But so essentially these basically are all used in it specifically to counter enemy magic or endless spells or etc. And also, the big caveat with these is that okay, one, it appears that heroes can load up with one of these in addition to an artifact they can take. Also, you can't actually you can't use these if you have an army that has wizards. So basically, if your army contains any wizards, you can't take these at all, because the whole theme of these is to counter enemy wizards. So I personally kind of like that as from like a fluffy perspective, but I don't really see why that had to be so limiting. Like for example, like I don't really see why if you had a wizard in your army, I don't really see if these being overpowered, bringing these in an army with a wizard, because I don't know. That's just my 2 cents. Like I get where they're going with, but I think that was a little bit overkill. But you know, it is what it is. So what they basically are, specifically, are one basically allows the bearer to unbind or dispel an enemy, in the enemy hero phase, just like a wizard, plain and simple. And also, if they successfully do so, they can dispel or unbind again. So yeah, that's not bad. The next one basically allows, this is a once per battle, mind you. You put this off, and for that whole casting phase, any doubles of 1, 2, or 3 automatically miscast. And also, if your opponent used any primal dice and this miscast, it automatically primal miscast. So if that's bad, because that's the D3 plus 3 miscast. That can just basically just one shot a wizard. And also, in addition to this, all endless spells on the table, you roll a dice for each endless spell that's on the table, and on a 5-up, it's just gone. So basically, this is once per battle, but this is like basically a once per turn, essentially just nuke the magic phase for a whole enemy hero phase. Like this, I could definitely see this causing some issues to some armies that rely on endless spells. Like for example, Disciples of Tzeentch are going to hate this with a grim passion. So, and to a lesser extent, Lumineth Realm Lords. So we're definitely going to see what happens there. And the next one I also really like is that the bearer, for example, when the bearer is basically picked to be affected by an enemy spell, it basically forces your opponent to pick another unit within 3 inches of it to be affected as well. So basically, if your unit is targeted, it forces them to target another unit, and if there is no another unit within another enemy unit within 3 inches of that, friendly unit within 3 inches of that, it just has no effect. So you basically put this on a hero, put it way up front, away from all your other friendlies, and it's basically just immune, and it's pretty much just immune to enemy spells. So that's kind of neat too. Not as sure if I like the whole affecting another friendly unit, because it could end up Kamehamehaing another important unit, without that you might actually need even more than that unit. But that's something to consider. So, in regards to the new magic phase, these are very interesting in my opinion. Personally, I think these are actually very good. Like, actually very good. Like, I don't think I saw even one that I really didn't like, and I saw potential in all of them. Now, one thing I did notice, however, though, there's very high casting values for these. Like, the lowest is, for example, the highest is like 8. The lowest is like 8, and then the highest is like a max 12. Now, at first, I could definitely see some issues with this, but then I just remembered, oh wait, that's right, we now have the new primal dice system. So obviously, the reason they made these so good and they made these values so high is because it's meant to encourage you to use the new primal dice system. This is why I see what they're doing here. They know that a lot of people might just say, oh well, I don't want to have to keep track of primal dice. We're just not going to use them. And then they put in these amazing spells everyone's going to want to use. but the casting value is so high, it comes a point where you're gonna probably have to use the primal dice. So GW, so I kind of see what they're doing here. The rules writers like preemptively saw that people would probably just want to, some people would want to just avoid the primal dice, and then so they threw these in there as like incentives to use them. So I see what they did there. And honestly, I think these are also a good reason why the Nullstone artifacts even exist and why they're all so good. Like the reason, like all those Nullstone artifacts are like major counters to enemy spells and wizards, and I think it's because the Primal Frost spells are just so darn good. They probably realize very quickly that if they don't give a counter, some of these spells could very well handicap non-magic armies like Sons of Bahamut or Blades of Corn very quickly. So it's no more suspense though. So one of them, the lowest casting is an 8, and it basically means you pick an enemy unit within 12 inches, and what you do is you then roll a d3, and then once you have the result, you take one of that unit's melee weapons and you change it to that. So let's, for example, you picked a unit and you picked one of their melee weapons and you roll a d3. Let's say it's a 2. Well, now that weapon will now hit on 2s, wound on 2s, and have a -2 rend. So basically it just, so yeah, and if you roll like a 3, so it'll hit on 3s, wound on 3s, rend 3, and then hit on 1s, wound on 1s, and now it did have a caveat though that again 1 still always fails. So basically if you switch it to a 1, it's basically just the same as switching it to a 2. If you roll a natural 1, it's always a fail. So very good right there, because on a Death Star unit that is very good. Rupture, basically casting of 10, range 18. You pick a predatory endless spell or incarnate, and it immediately comes wild for the rest of the battle. So even if it's being controlled or is being bound to an enemy hero, it just automatically becomes unbound. And this, I think, does have potential. I think it's a little more niche than the previous one, but just imagine, like, for example, someone with a Kronspine incarnate that's bound to a hero, and then all of a sudden you just randomly okay, now it's wild, and it just all of a sudden it's right in your opponent's army, and then it just tears through them randomly. Or you had the gnashing jaws, and you just make it go wild, and it just turns around and eats the enemy's general. Like I think that has some potential. Now the next one, however, I think is very interesting. Casting of 12, mind you. Remember, you have primal magic dice. A range of 12, and one caveat, this cannot be modified. So there's no putting this through like the Umbral Spell Portal. No, it's just 12 inches from the caster. But you basically just pick one enemy unit, and it takes 4d6 mortal wounds. Just flat 4d6 mortal wounds. But however, though, if you roll any every time you roll a natural 1, your caster takes d3 mortal wounds that cannot be negated. So sure, your opponent will take 4d6 mortal wounds, but you could, in theory, if you rolled 4 1s, you could just instantly kill your caster. But but even still though, this is still also a potential 24 mortal wounds to an enemy unit. Like this is very much a spell Kamehameha. Like this can one-shot like so many things in the game. Like I think I know this is going to be a big risk and reward, but hey, we've seen the Bone Splitters with their mask off. I've seen that enough to know people will definitely take the risk on this for the potential gain. So yeah, honestly, I think all of these have value. Hoarfrost and Merciless Blizzard more so, but definitely I think all of them have merit. So, the new command traits. Overall, I think the command traits are pretty good. There's no serious bad ones, like nothing that just screams never take this. Take it unless if you want to handicap yourself. Again, as always, some are obviously better than others. But also a few of them also I feel can also be used to help offset the Nullstone Adornment shenanigans. So I think that's kind of I like what the rule writers are doing in this regard, in that okay, they put the Nullstone Adornments to counter some spells, but they put some of these too to make sure that some armies just don't get handicapped too much. Because don't forget, like a lot of non-magic armies, like for example, like the Blades of Corn, they already have a lot of abilities that can affect spells. You don't want them to get too good at stuff. So specifically, for example, one of them allows, the general to know all the Primal Frost spells, and as I mentioned, those are all good, so that's a good one. One allows a hero, if your general's on the table, you roll in the hero phase, and if you roll a 5+, you just get a command point. Like, honestly, that's a pretty good one too. You always want to, I think you always want to have more command traits. And again, this can actually, this can actually definitely, I think this can stack well with the realm rule, where you can just get like an extra command point in turn, so you can really stack up command points. One is a once per battle ability. Basically, if your general ever miscasts or primal miscast, you just roll a 3+ and ignore the effects. So again, that can really help offset that Nullstone Adornment that just basically makes you miscast automatically on doubles, 1s, 2s, and 3s. So this can actually be a counter to counter. I don't know how much that's ever going to come up, but it's there. And there's also an Eater of Magic. So this one, I don't know about this one. So basically, each time the general unbinds a spell, if it does so, you roll a 5+, and if you do, that caster no longer knows that spell, and it can't use that spell for the rest of the battle. So yeah, I don't know about this one, because this one has a lot of potential to be very broken if you spike dice, like especially if a general that can unbind multiple turns. Like, just imagine if you have a general that can unbind 2 or 3 or more times, and let's just say he always rolls that 5 up. You can basically completely neuter your opponent's ability to cast spells. Just a couple battle rounds of this, and your opponent's magic could just be dead. I don't know about this, because this has a potential to be very swingy. I feel like just a couple well publicized games of this just completely neutering your opponent's ability to cast spells. I could definitely see calls for maybe an errata on that one. So we'll see what goes on that one. I personally think it's okay, but I do see some issues for abuse on it, because especially again, if your opponent remember, if your opponent just spikes the dice real bad, I could see some real issue with that. So, new core battalions. These ones are okay. So we got one that's just basically that just includes 2 to 3 heroes. All have to be with 9 or less wounds, and basically if just 2 or more of them are on the battlefield, you roll a 3+. And if you do, and this is the hero phase, mind you, you just gain a primal magic dice. That's pretty good. Again, though, I don't know. Like I said, the problem with this is, though, there's already multiple ways to gain primal magic dice. I don't know how many people would use up a battalion just to get more of them. I just don't know. Because I could definitely see people in general just, kind of just having enough each round. Because I think on each casting phase or on each hero phase, you only really need 1 or 2. So do you really need more? On top of that, the next one is basically the second coming of the Bounty Hunters battalion from the first season. Essentially, it has to include 1 hero, 1 infantry with 4 or less wounds, and optionally you can have another infantry and a monster. So basically, each time this unit fights, if it's targeting an enemy wizard, you can get +1 attacks, but it has to attack that wizard. And this battalion can't include wizards for obvious fluff reasons. Again, this is okay, but again, the problem with this is like so many battalions, what I mean is why would you take this when there's just so many benefits to the 1-drop battalion, or why would you take this for X amount of reasons? like I could just see on a competitive scene, like these would be probably seen as fluffy, but ultimately not the most competitive build. Because I know a lot of people are just obsessed with that one drop battalion, or like the occasional battalion where you get a free like all out defense or whatever. Like, I don't know. And also, I think it's also kind of a shame because it appears that we've lost some of the other battalions, like the Galatian Veterans one. Like I think a lot of people were really appreciating that allowing units to fight if they're within half an inch of a friendly unit. That's a real shame if we lost that. However, I am still pretty certain we're probably going to get. That's probably just going to become a core ability in 4th edition, just from the sheer positive feedback it got. So even if it's gone, I doubt it's going to be gone forever. But again, this is just a class example of core battalions that I just don't really see I don't really see them getting used a whole lot. It's just, at least not in the competitive scene. Grand strategies. Grand strategies are grand strategies. These ones are okay. I'm not gonna go over all of them because I'm not really seeing people using these much. It's because, again, like so many seasons before, I think there's just too much competition in the core book or the various unique army grand strategies. I think they're just too competitive for these to really be taken much. Like, again, they're fluffy, but I think some people will just go for the ones like in their own book that are just so easy to get. Some honorable mentions, though, like, if your general is an Andorian Locust, if you keep him alive to the end of the battle, you get it. There's another, if there's no enemy wizards at the end of the battle, that's fluffy. I think it's doable, too, but again, I'm not going to cover grand strategies much. I really don't think we're going to see them all, at least these ones, all that much. Now, battle tactics, however, there are some good ones here. Again, it's still going to face heavy competition from other books. There's just so many different battle tactics out there that I think there's just I think if for a potential 4th edition, I think they do need to maybe cut down some of the battle tactics because, like I said, there's so many battle tactics, but there's some that are so easy to get that they're basically just pushing out all the other ones. As expected, a lot of these are heavily magic themed. They're based around like wizards or Andorian Locust keywords. But still, though, there's still some stuff for the non-magic, though. So actually, more than I had expected. Like I would say there's still definitely a lot that don't require units with any magic association whatsoever. Some favorites of mine are kill a unit that killed your general. Fair enough. One I really like, too, is if you have more friendly units outside your territory than in it. Like a lot of fast-moving armies or armies with not a lot of units, that's easy enough to get. And also one is if 2 units retreated this turn, and in the same turn 2 units charge this turn. I think that's definitely doable, especially for mass fighting units. Like, for example, like, cavalry armies or armies with lots of infantry. That's very doable. So I think those are just some examples of some ones that I think we'll definitely see. Some of the others I don't think we're going to see much of because they're either just not good enough or they're just require too many hoops to jump through. I just don't see anyone using those. So, as mentioned, I did not cover everything in the book too. Like, for example, I don't think I'm gonna cover like the endless spell changes or the battle tactics. One is because again, those are so big in and of itself. I think those require a whole video in and of themselves. And as I've mentioned in the past, I don't like to reveal everything. I kind of like to leave something for people to discover on their own. So I suggest just look those up in the book. Give yourself a reason to maybe check it out. So overall, my thoughts. I'm gonna have to admit, I had some reservations when I heard what they were doing in the change up, because mostly I just really liked what they did with the last season. I feel like they really hit a good stride, focusing on like like small heroes, foot heroes, mind you. Like I really liked their abilities not to protect your heroes more. And stuff like that. I thought that was a really good thing. So when I heard it was going to be focusing heavily on wizards, I was a little scared because, again, are we going to get back to the old thing where, okay, we're going to be focusing so heavy on wizard armies, the non-wizard armies are just basically just going to be left out in the lurch again? But no, I'm actually quite happy that this is actually pretty fair. Like, if you do not have a single wizard or even the ability to get a wizard in your army, you will probably be just fine. And I also like what they really did with the overall idea. I think, I feel like this is, they really struck a balance between giving and taking, or like, you know, and also gave a reason to want to take some of the stuff from this handbook. Because let's be honest right here, there's been stuff in the old seasons where people just didn't take at all. So I think this definitely has potential. I definitely want to see where the meta ends up with this, because truth be told, I could definitely actually see that this actually getting like the counters and the incentives to kill wizards being so big that, you know, I hope this doesn't turn into the first season where the counters are so good that you just end up just not seeing what the theme is. Like, for example, the first season was all about, like, you know, infantry with 4 or less wounds. But then you put counters to those infantry that were so big that people just stopped taking them. All you ever saw was like cavalry and monsters. So this is the one. I just hope it doesn't get to the point where, you know, wizards become so priority target you just don't see wizards anymore. But I don't think that's going to happen here, because even though I'm worried about it, I don't think it's going to happen, because, again, there's so many incentives to take them. For example, the primal dice mechanic. So I hope everyone is not too what's the word, nervous about it, because, again, there's something to keep in mind. This is not a 6-month season. This is going to last a whole year, and probably it's going to be the last season before 4th edition. So hopefully everything works out, and yeah, so I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a great day. Cheers.